We've talked so much about UConn, and frankly, at this point, from what we've seen from UConn, I don't know what else to say other than they are as advertised. They are absolutely terrifying. We've touched on UCLA and how difficult Lauren Betts is to defend. We've touched on Texas. Can Vic Schaefer win his first national championship? The superstar that Madison Booker is. And I don't know why we just kind of have conveniently just glossed over South Carolina, like, oh, yeah, by the way, and they're going to their 12th straight Sweet 16 under Don Staley. But let's talk about something else. Like, I don't want to gloss over the greatness and the excellence of the South Carolina team. And I also want to point out how difficult it probably was for Don Staley to get here. South Carolina lost Chloe Kitts for the season to an ACL tear, and it doesn't feel like South Carolina has missed a beat. One of South Carolina's most glaring deficiencies maybe last year was their size. So what does Dawn Staley do? She goes out and she gets Medina Okot in the transfer portal, who, oh yeah, by the way, had 15 points and 15 rebounds last night against Southern Cal. We talked a lot about how, maybe South Carolina wasn't as deep as they were in previous years. In previous years, Dawn Staley has really relied on her bench for winning championships or getting to Final Fours. But South Carolina got 30 points off the bench last night. South Carolina had two bench players in double digits last night. And of course, part of that is they were up so big so early in this game. Southern Cal never had a lead in this game. So Dawn Staley was able to rest her starters a little bit and turn to her bench earlier, maybe than normal, but still. Like this South Carolina team, they have shown us all season long. But I don't know why we haven't really been paying attention, why we've been distracted maybe by some other great teams. And look, uh, um, UCLA, UConn, Texas, LSU, Vanderbilt, all great and wonderful teams, and all teams that if they find themselves in Final Fours, I will not be surprised in the slightest. But South Carolina has every single piece of a championship formula. They have size, they have depth, they have experience, and they have consistency. They have found this level of consistency, consistent greatness that is necessary in a championship formula. So, why we haven't talked enough about South Carolina, I do not know. But I think after a 40-point win over a USC team that was a 1 seed last season and that has one of the most electric freshmen in the country in Jazzy Davidson, I think deserves some love.
I think it's fool's gold to bet against Dawn Staley, right? Like there are certain coaches that continually, not only do they continually bring it, but there's certain coaches that just have an edge to everything they do. We've been lucky enough in our careers to get to talk to Coach several times, and every time I talk to her, I just realize part of what makes her great is that there is an edge to everything that she approaches. And you got to feel like she made it clear when they lost earlier this year, hey, the last time we lost in this situation, we turned around and won a national championship. The one team not surprised in the greatness of South Carolina would be South Carolina, because Dawn Staley knows how to make sure that her team believes in everything that they're doing. And this is a great basketball team. I struggle, though, to make sense of it all, because you mentioned it earlier. We'll get there. UConn, I mean, at one point in the first half, it was 60-something to 12, right? Like, when you talk about what UConn did getting Sweet 16 bound, I walked into that game thinking, all right, look, we get statement wins. Like the fact that UCLA only wins by 19, and it's like that feels like that's the tightest win. It feels like that's just a little bit like UCLA over Oklahoma State 87-68 feels tight because everybody else blew everybody else out. UConn went out and just absolutely embarrassed a team that belonged in the NCAA tournament. This wasn't a Duke taking on Nashville Auto Diesel College in men's college basketball. Like these were two teams deserving of being in the tournament. And then you've got all of a sudden such a slaughter that Syracuse's head coach is saying, hey, we can't be sent to this bracket. We can't always have to play at Gamble. Like it's unfair at this point. UConn is unfair, Caroline. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. We need to give shine and love to Dawn Staley. But also what UConn did last night was just a big fat old reminder that UConn is out here just walloping everybody.
Important to point out, just because we give love to one team doesn't mean that we hate other teams. Okay, everybody, just take a chill pill. You say what UConn is doing is unfair. I would also add AZ Fudd hitting 8 threes. That's unfair. That's ridiculous. Like this UConn team has not shown to have a single flaw. They're one of the most efficient offenses in the country. Defensively, they are tough. They are deep. They are so well coached. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. I would say the only thing If I had to point out a potential fatal flaw for UConn, and I'm really, really grasping at straws here, I really have to dig deep. I think being battle tested matters. South Carolina is
Mm.
battle tested. South Carolina's had to play Texas, one of the best teams in the country, the third overall seed, twice. Once in both in tournament settings, once in the Sphere and then once in the SEC championship game. UCLA has been battle tested. I would say, if not the SEC, the most dominant and competitive conference in women's college basketball, it is the Big Ten. I mean, look no further than what Michigan just did and what Minnesota is doing and how great Iowa has been playing, although we will get to Iowa in just a moment. UConn plays in the Big East, not competitive at all. And UConn, to their credit, did schedule difficult non-conference premier matchups. And it's not their fault that those teams just didn't really come to fruition as being the national powerhouses that we've grown accustomed to. UConn had USC on their schedule, and USC very obviously not the same team without Juju Watkins than they are with Juju Watkins. Now USC is getting Juju Watkins back next season. Everyone should be terrified about that. UConn scheduled Tennessee, one of the greatest brands in this sport. Tennessee's not a great team this year. Tennessee didn't win a single game in the month of March for the first time in program history. UConn scheduled Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame we will get to in a minute as well. Notre Dame looks much more terrifying now than they did during the season when they were pretty inconsistent, right? Notre Dame is a 6 seed for a reason. So UConn has not gone through the same gauntlet or the level of competition that the other 1 seeds have. And might I even extend that to Vanderbilt and LSU and some of these other teams that could potentially, scratch and claw their way to an Elite Eight, into a Final Four, and potentially to a national championship game. That is the one potential fatal flaw that if somebody tells me, hey, UConn doesn't win a national championship because of, I would say it is because they are not as battle tested as the rest of the field at the top.